The younger brother changed, became an adult, but died just as life began to get better. The older brother, who had always supported him, created a fund of memory. A story about change, loss, and a true legacy. Before anyone could say anything important, a mocking chuckle rang out in the room. It split the air like the cracking of glass and made everyone flinch a little. Light, carefree, even defenseless to the ear, but not today. It was not caused by a joke, not a funny situation, and not a game. It was laughter that mixed everything from misunderstanding to contempt. And worst of all, it was sincere. The younger brother leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and continued to smile, as if he had just heard something so naive that it was not even worth reacting seriously. There were empty plates on the table, untouched glasses, and a still warm dish that had suddenly been forgotten. All around were the same people with familiar faces, but no longer with the same atmosphere. He was always the center of attention, not because he deserved it, but because he knew how to take it away. His eyes sparkled with excitement, even when everyone else was determined. He managed to avoid responsibility so easily, as if it had been created for someone else. His life revolved around new impressions, high-profile acquaintances, and short victories. He knew how to laugh loudly, forget quickly, and disappear at the right moment. Everything he did seemed to be made for history, but never for depth. Others lived differently. One day followed another, leaving behind work, tension, fatigue, and endless duties. The older brother worked at night, during the day, and when he didn't even want to get up. He didn't say it out loud, but his hands, wrinkles, and gaze said more than any words could. Educating his younger brother had cost him more than money. It was giving up his own future for someone else's. But no one asked if he wanted it. It just happened one day. And every day that followed was repeated like an old movie without rewinding, and the mother, she always found an excuse. In her eyes, the youngest son remained the same boy who had once been afraid of the dark, who had pressed against her shoulder and asked when his father would return. She saw him as a child, even when he himself could have been a father. She wanted to believe that things could still be changed, that time would put everything in its place. But time went by, and the places only shifted. She cooked dinner, cleaned the rooms, washed the floors, and hoped. She hoped that one day that laughter would become understandable. That evening, something broke. Not loudly. No screams or loud bangs. Just something crackling deep inside, when everyone in the room realized that there was nothing left in common at the table. There was no longer that invisible thread that united even the most diverse people. It broke the moment the younger brother laughed. Not out of anger, not out of malice, simply because he didn't understand. For him, everything was a game. Studying is a bill that has been paid. Family is a warm place to return to after fun. The future is something far away, comfortable, optional, and the older one sat silently, watching. His gaze was hard as stone, but there was no resentment in it. Only silence. He didn't feel like talking anymore. He had already said everything, with his life. All those sleepless nights, the rejection of dreams, the endless work shifts, all this had been said. And that's why his silence was louder than any words. The evening continued without movement. Everyone was thinking about their own things. The mother looked at the younger one again, as if he were a little boy who could still be corrected. He looked at the ceiling as if he was tired of sitting here. And the older one continued to sit silently on the edge, with the same expression on his face that he had when he first promised his father that he would take care of everyone. But his father had long since left. And with him a responsibility that had not disappeared, but had only been transferred to the one who was silent. It was getting dark outside the window. The light from the lamps was filtering through the glass, leaving dim reflections on the plates. No one moved. Even the laughter had died down, leaving a dull echo that pierced the air like a needle. That laughter was not a crime. But it was the beginning. The beginning of a rift that no one could cover up with smiles anymore. After that dinner, the night brought no peace. Everyone lay down in their own corner of the house, but no one slept peacefully. In the younger man's room, the monitor was crackling, the colors of the game were flickering, the buttons were clicking under his fingers. His heart was beating fast, like a runner's, but not from fear, but from tension, excitement, the thirst for victory in yet another virtual battle. At that time, he had no family, no problems, nothing that would make him look back. There were only numbers, levels, victories. And a silence that he did not notice. The eldest was sitting on the bed, not undressing. His hands were on his knees, his shoulders slightly bent forward, his gaze fixed on the floor. He didn't want to think, but thoughts stubbornly crept into his head. He remembered how the same brother had once stood at his door, asking for money for a new phone, then for a move, later for his studies. All with promises that this would be the last time. But the last time never became the last. And the more he helped, the less he received in return. No thanks. No understanding. No change. Only new requests. Mother got up at night, groped for her dressing gown, and went out into the kitchen. She turned on the light, looked at the table, where the remains of dinner were left. She broke off a piece of bread, put it back. Her fingers trembled. But not from old age, but from fatigue. She knew that her son was no longer a child. She knew, but she couldn't let go of the thought. Because once she admitted that he was an adult, she would have to admit that the responsibility for his mistakes lay with him. And that hurt. Too much for a woman who believed that love could heal everything. By dawn, everyone was back on their feet. The eldest had left for work earlier than necessary so as not to meet anyone in the kitchen. His hands had long since become automatic. He buttoned his clothes, tied his shoes, put his wallet in his pocket. The car started the first time, as it always did. He liked it, unlike people. Technology didn't let him down. The younger one woke up in the afternoon. Sleepy, but not broken. The first thing he did was check his phone. There were a dozen messages, mostly memes, jokes, nonsense. He smiled. Life went on. Then he opened the bank app. The balance was minimal. He shrugged his shoulders, not for the first time. A thought came to his mind, call the older one. But something in his back tightened. A strange feeling. As if for the first time he had understood, it wasn't worth it. Not today. He went outside, walked without direction. Fragments of last night's dinner were spinning in his head. Not words, but looks. Especially his brother's look. The one that seemed to hit him in the chest a little. Without a scream, without reproach, but it was everything. It wasn't familiar. Usually. Everything passed, his mother smoothed out the corners, his brother silently helped, and life went on. But something had changed. He couldn't understand what exactly, but it was something that no longer allowed him to think that everything would pass. His mother was cooking dinner when his younger brother returned. Her movements were sluggish, her eyes absent-minded. She had forgotten something in the oven, then she opened the refrigerator. Again, looking for what she already had in her hands. She felt guilty. Not because of one son. Because of both. Her heart was torn between duty and love, between memories and reality. She didn't know how to fix it. She didn't know if it was even possible. But she knew that time was running out. And that silence was becoming increasingly difficult. Meanwhile, the eldest had finished his shift, gotten into his car, and wasn't going home. He stopped near a small park, got out, sat on a bench, and looked into the distance. He needed some space. Some silence, some self. He remembered how he and his brother had played in the same park when they were little. They had run, pushed, laughed. But then he didn't know that one day he would become not just a brother, but the guarantor of someone else's life. He had no choice. But now something was changing. For the first time in a long time, a thought had appeared in him. What if, how could he stop if the younger one didn't turn on the game that evening? He lay in his room, staring at the ceiling and thinking. Not about money. Not about the new phone. But about his brother. About how he was silent, how he sat on the edge of the table, how he didn't look away. And he felt uneasy. Not from fear. But from something else, something he didn't know yet. It was new. And that's why it was unsettling. The older one returned late. His mother was already asleep. The younger one wasn't asleep. They passed each other in the hallway. Silently. And this silence was deeper than all the previous conversations. One walked past, the other stood. And each thought the same thing in there. Silence. Something was changing. The next day, the world spun again, as if nothing had happened, but in the house every movement was unusually muffled. Instead of the usual sounds, there was a rustling. Instead of peace, there was a tension that weighed in the air. No one shouted, argued, or made a scene, but something invisible had already separated those who had been sitting at the same table just yesterday. Mother was cleaning the kitchen, washing the floor, and dusting, but even her steps were different, as if she were walking not on the floor but on a shell she was afraid to break. Her favorite tea remained untouched, because her hand never reached the cup. The eldest got up early. Again, earlier than necessary. His body was already living on autopilot, moving quickly, effortlessly, as if some old, well-tuned system was working inside it. But something inside was humming like an overheated engine. Work no longer saved him. Before, it had absorbed everything. Squeezed out thoughts. And now, even in an environment with a bunch of tasks and voices, he couldn't get his brother's gaze out of his head. That gaze haunted him. The youngest also woke up early, for the first time in several weeks. He dreamed of something heavy, gray, sticky, like mud. He sat on the bed for a long time before he dared to get up. He turned on his phone, checked his messages, closed them all. There was almost no money left in the account. He looked at the closet. There was a diploma, still wrapped in cellophane. It had never been hung up. He hadn't opened it. He had never read what was written on it. For him, it was a formality, a ticket to a world where he didn't yet know why he needed it. But now he felt that that piece of paper was no joke. What was behind it was someone's work. Someone's fatigue, someone's hope. That day he didn't leave the house. He lay there. Walked around, read something on the internet, opened old photos, closed them, opened them again. For the first time, he wondered what would happen if all this suddenly stopped. If his brother didn't answer anymore. If his mother didn't answer. If he was left alone. The eldest didn't go home after work. He went to an interview. A new job. In another city. Maybe even in another country. For the first time in many years, he was doing something not for someone else, but for himself. He didn't plan to speak. He didn't plan to leave notes. He was just mentally packing things up. Carefully, without noise, without decisions, just assumptions. He didn't want to take revenge. He didn't want to leave everything with anger. But he couldn't stay any longer. The fatigue finally reached the ceiling. In the evening, he returned home. His mother was asleep. The younger one was in his room. Light was filtering through the crack in the door. The older one paused for a moment. Then he went to his room. He knew that tomorrow might be a day of change. He didn't ask for anything. But for the first time, he wanted something. Not a new beginning, not a new job. Just silence without a burden. At night, the younger one couldn't sleep. He was shaking. It seemed to him that the house was shaking with him. He remembered how he and his brother used to play airplane at home. The older one would spin it, toss it, catch it. He thought his brother was a superhero then. Then there were his school years. A cell phone that others didn't have. Games that his friends didn't have. Even studying wasn't his fault, it was someone else's investment. All of this was going well. Until yesterday. In the morning. Both of them woke up early. Regardless. The older one had already packed his bag. It wasn't lying in plain sight. It was hidden, like a thought he hadn't yet decided to voice. His mother was walking around the kitchen again, silent, a bit strange. Everyone was moving, as if preparing for something unknown. The younger one stood in front of the mirror for a long time. His gaze was different. He hadn't decided anything yet, but something in him had changed. Maybe for the first time, he wanted to answer. That day, a letter arrived from the bank in the name of the older one. It was lying on the table. Open. The younger one didn't read, but he knew what was there. Debt. Not his brother's. He didn't peek. But he saw the bag. He saw the shadow on his face. And he felt that time had passed. He didn't go for a walk. He didn't turn on the game. He sat down and started writing. Not an apology. Not an appeal. He wrote a receipt. A real one. For the amount his brother owed. Without signatures. Without a notary. But with dates. Then he took his diploma. He went to the nearest employment office. They gave him a questionnaire. Then another one. And more. He filled them all out. He was shaking. But he didn't stop. For the first time, not for himself, the elder returned late in the evening. The bag was by the door. The younger was sitting in the hallway. On the table was a sheet of paper with numbers. And a diploma. For the first time, it was open. The elder stopped. His hand touched the paper. He said nothing. But he understood. Something had begun. Maybe too late. Or maybe just in time. The following days passed without any unnecessary words. An unusual balance reigned in the house, fragile, like thin ice. The mother was silent, but she noticed something was changing. She did not ask questions, did not break the silence. A shadow of anxiety appeared in her gaze, mixed with hope. She saw how the younger left the house every morning and returned tired, sometimes with some papers, sometimes without anything. She saw how the elder began to return earlier, as if he was waiting for something. No one said anything, but the tension between the brothers slowly turned into something else. Not trust, but something like that. It looks like an attempt. The younger one applied for courses. Short-term, intensive. He got a call the next day. He came, nervous, couldn't find an audience, sat on the edge. But he didn't run away. He listened. He took notes. He watched. There were others nearby, just as new, just as lost. For the first time in a long time, he felt not inferior, but equal. He was not known. He was not despised. He was not expected. But he was part of something. The older one didn't ask where his brother was going. He didn't care when he would return. But every day he found himself counting the hours until he came back. He didn't expect a miracle. He didn't expect compensation. He just made sure he didn't disappear. Because if he disappeared now, everything would fall apart again. Mother once left 3 cups of tea on the table. She had never done that before. She always made them separately when asked. But this time she just put it down and left. The evening was quiet. The eldest came first. He sat down. Then the younger. He saw the tea and sat down. Opposite. His mother didn't come. But they drank it. A week later, a representative of a company looking for employees came to the courses. The younger one applied. His hand trembled. His resume was short, no experience, just courses, a few small facts. But he was called in for an interview. They set a date. That evening, he came home early. He sat in his room, staring at the ceiling. Then he went out into the hallway. He knocked on his brother's door. He didn't open it. He just put a copy of his resume on the floor and disappeared into himself. The elder one found it later. He read it. For the first time in many months, he smiled. Barely. Without sarcasm. Without irony. Naturally, the next morning. The interview. The younger one woke up earlier than anyone else. He got ready for a long time. He checked his clothes, hairstyle, and shoes. He didn't have a briefcase. He was holding documents in his hands. The bus was late. He got lost in the office. But he made it. And he told everything he knew. He didn't lie. He didn't humiliate himself. He was just himself. For the first time, not as a child, but as an adult. At home, his mother was quietly preparing dinner. The eldest was cleaning the yard. They didn't have to be asked. For the first time, everyone knew what to do. The mother looked out the window and thought about the past. How it all began. How her sons were small. How they ran, screamed, fought for toys. How one protected the other. And how everything had changed. But now, something had returned. Not completely. But it wasn't so dark anymore. In the evening, the youngest returned. Slowly, without haste. In his hands, an envelope. He put it on the table. He went to his room. His mother came up. She took it. She opened it. There, a job offer. Starting rate. Temporary contract. But real, official. She sighed. But she didn't cry. There were no more tears. There was only a feeling as if a light had appeared in the house. At night, the 2 brothers sat in different rooms, not talking, not hearing each other. But both knew, tomorrow would be a new day. Completely new, but everything was still on the edge. Because real changes don't happen instantly, and that's why the morning call came as a surprise. The phone rang early. Mother answered. Her face changed. She hung up the phone. She sat down. Her hands trembled. Her voice disappeared. But she didn't shout. The eldest came first, then the youngest. She got up. Slowly, with difficulty. She said only one sentence. And left. Both remained standing. Someone died. A distant relative. Old, forgotten. But that wasn't important. What was important was that they had to go. To represent the family. To be together. For the first time as adults, Mother didn't go. She stayed. She said they had their own way. And that was symbolic. For the first time, she didn't stand between them. She didn't indicate who should be right. The road was long. There was no music playing in the car. There was no conversation. But the silence no longer cut. It became a tool. A test. And perhaps healing. On the spot, they silently did everything. The necessary presence, the necessary respect, the formal steps. And then they turned back. On the way, they stopped at a gas station. They got coffee. For the first time, both of them at the same time. No one said a toast. But both took a sip. In their eyes, peace. Not closeness. But agreement. Returning home, they found their mother in an armchair. She was sleeping. For the first time in a long time, peacefully. Without worries. Without shaking fingers. And then the elder went up to his brother. He held out a piece of paper. There was the settlement amount. Accurate, to the penny. The younger took it. Read it. Put it in his pocket. Not as a debt. As a direction. Several weeks passed. The house became quieter, but this silence was different. Not heavy, but concentrated. The younger went to work every day, came in tired. Slightly disheveled, but something in his posture had changed. His shoulders were no longer drooped. His movements became more confident. He did not yet have wealth, he did not have fame, but he had something more important, an inner core that had previously been hidden under his childishness. The elder also changed. He no longer lived for work. He spent more time at home, in the garden, with his mother. He often wrote something down in a notebook, calculated something. No one asked what exactly. But it was clear, he was no longer running from something, but was walking towards something of his own. His steps became freer. Sometimes there was even a hint of a smile, although it was restrained. The mother finally began to laugh. Her eyes no longer sought confirmation in her son's every movement. She felt that something had grown between them, not love, perhaps not even friendship, but respect. And this was enough to live on without worries. She began to cook dinners again, set the table for 3, leave napkins with patterns. A habit that had been lost was restored. One evening the younger one came home with news: his contract had been extended. He had even received his first promotion. Not a serious one yet, but still. His mother hugged him, as she had once done in childhood. The older one just nodded, didn't say a word, but his look said more than all the congratulations. At that moment, the younger one felt that he had done something right. He continued to pay off the debt. In parts. Without reminders. Without notes. Sometimes he would just put the bill on the table. The older one never counted, but always took it. Not as payment, but as a gesture, his mother suggested that they get together for dinner. Just the three of them. Without events, without reasons. And it turned out to be the warmest evening in recent years. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't remember the quarrels, the insults, the laughter at the table that had once changed everything. They just worked together. In silence, in ease, in a new reality. The next day, the younger one left early. He had a meeting. Not a work one. A personal one. For the first time in a long time, someone had asked him out. He spent a long time choosing clothes, perfume, even got a haircut. The older one smiled when he saw him. But he didn't say anything. The day was sunny. The younger one walked down the street, thinking about life. About how it could have been, how it was, and how it would still be. He didn't have any big plans, but he had a desire. And that was a lot, and that very day something happened that no one expected. At the intersection, braking. Scream. Howling tires. The body was thrown back a few meters. People were screaming. Sirens. The pulse was slowing down. The younger one died instantly. The hospital couldn't do anything. Documents, phone, wallet, a piece of paper with the address. They called. The mother froze. She didn't cry. She just stood there, holding on to the door. The older one sat down. He didn't say anything. His hands didn't shake. His eyes were empty. He didn't know what to do. Because he wasn't ready. For the first time, the funeral was discreet. Without unnecessary words. Many people came. Colleagues from work. Even those my brother had just met. Someone brought a card that said he was changing. And we saw it. The older one left it in his pocket. The mother was silent for a long time. Then, a few days later, she sat down at the table and opened an old album. I looked at the photo. I cried for the first time. But quietly, the eldest gathered his brother's things. He did everything carefully. Neatly. He found a notebook in a drawer. There were notes. Whole pages with plans. Lists of expenses, calculations. And at the very end, a sentence: I want him to be proud of me. Not once. But now. The eldest held that notebook in his hands for a long time. Then, he put it in a drawer. But he didn't close it. Since then, every morning he opened it to different pages. Read. Put it away. Weeks passed. Mother gradually came to life. The eldest worked. But something in him remained irreversible, and then he decided. He gathered all his savings. He opened a small fund in his brother's name. Help for young guys who want to get out of a dead end. Scholarships. Courses. The first step for those who had no support. He called it simply, by name. No embellishments. No advertising. A year later, at the ceremony of awarding the first scholarship, he spoke. A few words. Only that real changes do not come from the outside, but from the inside. And that sometimes it is too late. But even then it is not in vain. Mother was sitting in the hall. For the first time, she smiled again. Because she knew something had been preserved, and in the old room, which was left after the youngest, there was a frame on the shelf. In it was a diploma. And next to it was a printout of the letter of acceptance for work. A small inscription. At the bottom, for him. So that he knows. And then it became clear, even though he was gone, something remained. And this something was real.